I mean, talk to me, because we don't really talk about death. You've said before that, we don't see death. We don't kill our animals. People die in hospitals. Is this kind of underlying a lot of our behaviors? And is this something we can maybe try to get in touch with more to understand ourselves better?
Yeah, I mean, the irony was that I wrote that chapter about confronting our mortality, the last law, in like May of 2018. I finished it. And literally 2.5 months later, I had my stroke and I nearly died. So everything that I wrote about, I suddenly had to confront in real life. And what you say there is something that I write about in the book. If you read a lot of history like I do, you know that in centuries before, let's say the 19th century and beyond, death was a continual presence in people's lives, even in the 20th century with World War I and World War II, for instance. You were seeing dead bodies in the street. People were dying in your home. Okay. There were plagues, etc. There was something like the coronavirus with millions of people dying on the street, cadavers piled up. You saw it all the time. And then animals that were killed for your food. You literally saw the chicken being killed or whatever it was, right? So death was this presence in your life. It was very palpable. And people were obsessed with it. It was why a lot of religion took off and became so popular and so necessary, because confronting your mortality is a terrible thing when you see it day in and day out. And we have managed to create this an antiseptic kind of lifeless world where we've banished death to this little corner in these sanitized hospitals where people die alone under machines, etc., where we could go our whole lives and never once see an actual dead person, which is an insane thing, because life means death. The moment you were born, you're going to die. Every cell in your body is in the process of dying, right? So there is no such thing as life without death. It's part of it's two sides of the same thing. So to repress it, to hide it from our view, is to hide life from our view, right? And what makes it even worse is in our entertainment, in our video games, in our movies. We have this sort of cartoonish version of death where hundreds of people are shot with one gun and they all fall down, and there's no life, there's no empathy, there's no psychology into what is it like to be killed like that. What does it feel like? We have no feelings anymore about what death means. So we live in a very dangerous world, and to repress death, which is as I said, the flip side of life, is to repress something very important, and it's to create fear inside of you. People in the 21st century, 20th and 21st century, we have a lot of anxiety, much more than our ancestors did, right? We feel a lot more stress and anxiety about our careers, about our lives. And that anxiety stems from this one thing that we're not confronting, which is our own mortality. When you don't confront your death, you're not dealing with something. It's the most real thing in your future. And it's causing you to have this kind of continual anxiety that sits inside of you and that you channel towards other things. So your anxiety about where you will be in 2 years with your career is actually a disguised anxiety about your death, about your own mortality. Okay. So you need to turn this around. So instead of hiding from death, which is, in I don't know if you ever read, when I was sort of a hippie in the early 70s, and I loved the books of Carlos Castaneda, the teachings of Don Juan. I read every single one. He said that death is a hunter. It's stalking you. It's behind you every second. It's hunting you every moment of life, and you don't realize that it's on your heels. I always stuck that image. Okay, instead of like having it there and running away from it, turn around and face it and look at it for yourself. And how do you do that? Well, it can't just be an intellectual exercise. It has to be real. It's what I have to call visceral. So samurai warriors who are facing death on a weekly basis in a sword fight wasn't just like a boxing match. You would die if you lost, right? So they would meditate on death, and they would meditate it in their viscera, in what's called the tanden or the hara in Japanese, where we get the word harakiri. They would think about death right there, and they would meditate on it so they would lose the fear of it. You have to make death a visceral hara presence in your life. I meditate every morning, and I would sometimes go through an exercise where I would literally imagine my own death, like it's happening here on this day. It's in the afternoon. my senses are kind of falling away. I'm looking out a window. I try and imagine, I try and make it real. It's not morbid, it's not gloomy. It's actually very affirming because it means you can get rid of the fear, the anxiety by confronting it. You can't completely get rid of it. If you got completely rid of it, you would run in front of a car on the street. You want to survive, but you also want to be aware of your own mortality and carry that with you.